Okay, we're here ready to cut and trim some pork spare ribs. And these are really all the utensils you need. This is for the membrane. This is just a mechanical thermometer and a paper towel because the membrane's slippery. A boning knife, we're working with bones, how ideal. But this is really good for trimming meat. And because we're gonna have to go through some bones and cartilage, I hate to use my nice knife, but I'm using my chef's knife to do that as well. And that's all you really need. I left the package on because a big part of this is to make sure that the meat is still good. So what I normally do is just poke a hole. And one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to hit the membrane here. And when stuff's cryovac, and also I'm not going to rinse this off in my sink. I'm in my sink right now with these ribs and I'm getting the juices off. But it will have a smell because it's been in this cryovac. And one thing you can do is you can smell it, and it smells okay. If it smells bad, wait, just let it air out for 5 minutes, come back to it. If not, it's no good. I learned that the hard way at a competition. Had some great pork butts and they smelled terrible. Half hour later, they still smelled terrible and had to go to the grocery store and get some, and it wasn't as good a meat. Just want to talk about the anatomy of the ribs. This is kind of end cap. We talked about that in the store. Basically, this ends up being a sacrifice rib, but you don't want this to come over here because this kind of, once you trim this away, you don't have a lot of meat and that bone's really not too good. And then over here is our smaller side. And there's several ways to trim these ribs. But how I'm going to show you is a good way to do it so you can get some rib tips. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut right here on the bone, right above the bone, and then the rest is going to be for tips. Now, if you've ever looked at a rib from the side, and you see the rib, and then you see kind of like a knuckle and a knuckle, those are your rib tips. And either you include those with your ribs or not. But the rib tips are really good, and I like to cook those separately. So we're gonna cut it tight to the bone, and then we're going to have the rib tips. Now if we're gonna keep the rib tips on with the ribs, we would cut up here, right along this line, and then their rib tips would be in there, and then you'd have your ribs. But we're gonna do rib tips today, and I'll show you how to do those because they're lots of fun. So the first thing I'm gonna do, well, let's just flip her over. And right here, little skirt, I'm gonna cut this guy off. So that's step one, cut off the skirt. Done. Okay. Next thing we want to do is trim up the ribs. And there's, right here is a bone. See that? That is actually the breastbone to the pig. The reason I like the spare ribs is they're closer to the bacon, they're closer to the sternum of the pig, and there's more fat and more flavor. Fat equals flavor. So that's why I like them. That's why a lot of other competitors like to use them as well. So what we're going to do is, these are your big bones. And normally your third bone over, 1, 2, 3, is your high bone. So we want to cut right at the knuckle of that bone and straight across. So that we can square these up like the St. Louis ribs that we saw in the store. You would measure from here to here, and you're going to come all the way to this side and do the same. There's also a small rib here, and so we're just going to cut this like that, so that piece comes off. And even though these ribs are shorter and it's going to have more meat above it, they still cut symmetrical by cutting it straight across. So I do this with my knife, and then I come over here on the rib, and I go right here. That's my marking. And now this is where we're gonna be cutting through some of those rib tips, and we're just gonna cut right along here and have a nice even cut. Now when I cut these, it doesn't matter normally how big the rib is. When I'm done, they're normally within like 2-3 ounces of each other, regardless of the size of the rack, because I trim them pretty uniform. So now we've got this off, and this is our rib tips. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. I'll put those right here. Okay, we've got a little bit of fat here. You can trim it if you want. I like to trim some of this fat to get it away so that I can get some more rub and smoke to the meat. And all I'm going to do is just trim a little of this excess fat. And that's all we're trying to do, just get a little extra. There's a little more of that. And you can go crazy with these, trying to get rid of every little piece. You don't have to do that. If you want to do it, great. If you're doing a competition, yes, I'd do it. But I'm trying to make this work for everybody, simple and easy. Okay, so now we've got a nice rectangle. And over here, here's that section that we're going to have to cut off. And right here is paper thin, so if you go through with your knife like this and then just kind of lift it up, get it started, and then you can just do a thin little cut like that and not get rid of too much meat. Now this side of the rib is actually fatter, so if you take away a little extra meat, that's okay. It'll help it cook a little more even. But you'll see what I'm saying is this ends up being a scrap guy over here. This one's not so bad. Sometimes these get really bad. But this is a good rib to cut off, to start tasting, to see if you like the rub, you want to add some more rub, etc. So again, this is kind of a throwaway rib, this guy right here. So we're just going to leave it like that. And then if you got some extra fat here, that's fine. Again, here's that marbling we were talking about. So these aren't the best marbled, but you'll see some in here, and that's good. The color, nice. Again, we're looking for ribs that have nice color and nice marbling. And so here we go. The only thing we have left here is the dreaded membrane. And I am going to use this here. And I like it this way. So from the top, where the big bones are, maybe one over, I'll just kind of come under. And you don't want to be too aggressive because there's actually another one underneath there. But see how this is lifting up? I'm going to bring this up to the camera. See, I can get my finger under here now. Hopefully you can see that right there. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to peel this off like a decal, like this. And once we can wean it around the edge, I'm trying to do this so you can really see how this works. Sometimes you'll get a slice through here from the butcher, and then you got to do it twice. This one doesn't, so I'm happy about that. This is where the paper towel comes in. And you want to take your time at first. You want to get the whole membrane like this. So then once it's like this, now we grab it with the paper towel and we just pull. And that's it. Membrane's off. Now we can get some nice smoke and some nice rub flavor into the meat. If you don't take this off, it's like a force field. Plus, it's chewy. So most restaurants don't have the time to do that. You don't have to do that, but it does turn out a better rack of ribs. So if you have the time, take the membrane off. And this here is a nicely trimmed rack of ribs ready for the barbecue. Oh, I need to show you how to do rib tips. So we are going to put these guys over here. And we're going to do our rib tips. I found there's, and if you can see, here are the rib tips, these little bones right here. You could do one, cut on either side, but I find that they get pretty dark pretty fast, so I like doing two. So to do that, and we got the rib bone here, or the breastbone here. So we're going to have to come and use this knife to protect that knife. 1, 2 bones. 1, 2 bones. 1, 2 bones. And right there. And these guys come out great. And they're fun to eat. This piece here, we're gonna throw away. So really, this is all we're throwing away. And this. And these are rib tips. And that's really all there is to trimming. Here's our rib tips, our scrap, and that's all she wrote.